Hi everyone, and welcome to another Future Design Forum 10-minute fireside Q&A session hosted by myself, Andy Smith of TDA Creative, the UX product and tech talent agency. I am delighted today and very enthused to be joined by Alastair Simpson, who's currently VP of Design at Dropbox in San Francisco. Thanks for joining us, Alastair. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew, and welcome everyone.
Cool. Alastair, let's start, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, you've had a great career today. You've worked in some brilliant places, but I'm also, a fellow Brit who's ended up in America via Sydney, which must have been a great kind of global career today. Can you give us just a little snapshot of your career to where you are now?
Yeah, I'll try and do it in 60 seconds. So I didn't want to be a designer, is the honest truth. I wanted to be a football player or soccer player, if anyone's listening from the US. I played professional until I was 16, but didn't quite make it, and then did play semi-professional until 37, until I had to retire. But the design career really started in Australia, really, where I was a design team of one at a large B2B publisher that maybe not many people have heard of anymore, could read business information because they published magazines in strange little, yeah, quite a few in strange little verticals like farming and manufacturing. But I started in their digital division where I was, as I said, a design team of one. We were transferring a lot of print revenue online, and I did everything: brand, interaction design, visual design. I built my own usability testing lab using very expensive at the time software called Moray, if anybody remembers that. And that was a really fun 4 or 5 years where I built a small team. I then went traveling for a year, my second kind of traveling stint around South and Central America, and then returned to Australia, where I worked at a super fun little agency called Neon Stingray, where we were doing kind of different device work. So I was doing in-flight entertainment, streaming video, streaming audio on in-flight for Qantas. Yeah, super interesting. Streaming video and audio on things like Xbox and smart TVs when smart TVs were kind of cool and coming out with all the apps on them. And then from there, I went to Atlassian, which was a super fun time. I was designer number 20 at Atlassian, helped grow the team to over 300. I ran design for all of the products that Atlassian had at some point because we were growing so quickly. So across Jira, Trello, Confluence, Bitbucket, and also founded their platform team, which was super fun. And then after 6 years, 6 really enjoyable years, I came to Dropbox, where I run brand, product design, research, and content design, and where I've been for just over 4 and a bit years.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That's a fair kind of spread there of the role you've got now, particularly with the brand piece in there as well.
Yeah.
And look, there's a question that's always floated around, particularly the design community, and it's always very topical. I mean, the question is how to elevate design in an organization or large organization, but it might even be better to position it as how to position design, perhaps, rather than elevate within org. What are your views around that, please, Alastair?
I think, in one word, I'd say intentionality. And I think, well, maybe this word will come up in the next 10 minutes quite a bit, is about being intentional. And what I mean by that is being intentional with how you build relationships and trust. Okay, because I think there's, again, you said this about how do you elevate design. You will have heard this, right? Design having a seat at the table, right? And I think though about how you build relationships and trust and how you elevate design is you have that seat at the table now. I think many design leaders do, but then what are you actually doing with that seat? Like, how are you leaning in? How are you building trust and partnerships with other disciplines? Because making a great company or building a great company or building a great product is all achieved through a cross-functional team, not just a great design team or a great design org or a great design leader. And then again, intentionality around how you build your team. So I think hiring is one of the most important roles that you can have. So making sure that you're bringing in amazing craftspeople into your team, and you're then coaching and mentoring and enabling them to use their own taste and judgment to build great products and build a great company. And then leading on to that last piece around intentionality, intentionally making sure how you build products is really, really important. So things like the details of the design, they matter a lot. Design critique matters a lot, and how you do design critique. Having great product principles to guide decisions really matter. And then having great taste, right? Taste and judgment, I think, is something I talk about a lot. But then also leaning in, if you're a design leader of a small or a big team, leaning in intentionally with your team to kind of guide the decisions and the details, the detailed decisions that they're making. Because
Yeah.
I don't see that as micromanagement if done well and with intention. For me, it's literally just showing that you care about the end product that your customers will see and use, and then obviously hopefully love. So I think, elevating that design org is, as I said, it's all about intention.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. Thank you. And coming on to our next question, there's a lot of talk of fully remote, of a lot of companies are going back to hybrid workplaces, or even, fully back on site. Dropbox have kind of led the way. I think it was in 2020, wasn't it, when virtual first came into place, which I'm sure many, particularly design leaders, might have heard of, because it's topical and it's a bit of a thought leadership piece. And I think it's quite renowned what Dropbox have done, becoming a fully remote workplace, which it seems they're willing to stay that way as well, unlike some others. I know you've been instrumental in designing that as a designer. Can you tell us about that, about your involvement in that, and about how it's been curated and how it's happened?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the word intentional will come up again, but it was very intentional. And I feel very fortunate and privileged to have been at Dropbox over this 4 years. And how it came about when COVID happened, we saw that as a great opportunity to rethink how work gets done. Dropbox's mission, and one of the reasons I joined, is to design an enlightened way of working. And so we saw, through obviously the devastation of the pandemic, the opportunity though to really rethink how work gets done. And so I actually co-led Dropbox's shift to remote work for 2 years. So I hired our first head of remote and a small little team, but I co-led that with our chief people officer. And so it was kind of interesting at the time because I did a fair amount of speaking at events on this topic, and it was pretty much 98% HR professionals. And they were like, why is a design leader in the room? Like, what are you doing here? I was stuck out like a sore thumb. But as I said, Dropbox saw this as a great opportunity. And we basically approached it with a learning mindset, but also with a human-centered design approach to rethink work, essentially. And I had, practically speaking, what does that mean? We literally created hypotheses for how we might change like the ways that we work. And then I had researchers following employees to understand how those hypotheses were playing out and what we were learning. And then we were bringing that data back in. And then if something had worked, we were then rolling it out. If something didn't quite work, then we were actually like making tweaks and changes. And so what we landed with, based on that, but also looking at the competitive landscape, looking at how the world was changing, was the model that you mentioned. It's called virtual first. And for us, it's what we believe to be the operating model of the future, because it combines the best of both remote work and also in-person experiences. And so the main thing we do in this model is we focus on how we work versus where we work. And so, intentionality is that foundation of virtual first. It's a detailed decision and approach to how we're operating and how we're getting work done. And so we think it's the evolution of modern work. And I'll, just so people can understand it, I'll share like a few of the kind of core practices or frameworks that we've applied across Dropbox to help people succeed in their job. So something called core collaboration hours, which is we've defined collaboration hours that overlap across time zones, where we encourage people to be online for synchronous collaboration. So it could be meetings, could be responding to Slack in time. But beyond those core collaboration hours, which are approximately 4 hours of a day, we encourage employees to design their own schedules to balance collaboration with the needs for individual focus and that deep work, right? People need more time for deep work. So it's essentially a non-linear workday that we're encouraging. Then we work async by default. So instead of just reflexively having a meeting, we encourage people to write down their thoughts and work asynchronous by default, and then only jump to a synchronous meeting if it's for something we call the 3Ds. So important decisions, important debate, or important discussions. Right. And then, we've built and launched a product called Dash, which is an AI-powered search tool. So you can find the information that you need in a quicker way. And then lastly, we publish something which anybody can go and look at. If you look up the Virtual First Toolkit, it's an open source guide for how to be effective in a remote working environment, with practices covering things like how to run an effective virtual meeting, how to build connection with your teams virtually. And so again, it's all about intentionality. And I'll pause there, but I can talk about some of the kind of results that we're seeing from it if you like.
Firstly, I think it's great that you guys have done such a great job with that and you're willing to share it as well. We'll include a couple of links so people can just have a quick look if they wish to, and I'm sure they will when we do this. But yeah, some of the results, if you wouldn't mind, what you're seeing.
I mean, because what we're seeing is, again, it's that word, intentionality is everything. Simply asking employees to come into an office a specific number of days per week with no other thought behind it, we don't think solves for things like improving culture or productivity. And so that's really why we've been so intentional with the model, and why we're sticking to it, is because, again, the data that we're seeing is really impressive. 90% of employees are satisfied with their ability to choose when and where they work. 89% of Dropboxers, so our team, say that they're successful working in virtual first. And then 82% report being able to do their job effectively, right? And then the last stat I'll give is like 78% of people feel really productive in their role. And so this is, as well as it being like a really great acquisition lever for new hires, why people are attracted to Dropbox, it's also a great retention lever for us too. And so employees really enjoy the model. And as I said, the data speaks for itself.
Brilliant. It's win-win, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the intentionality, but also providing the right tools for them. And I guess transferring that message and communicating it properly across the business as a whole, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, you touched on that there. I mean, communicating it, because certainly when we rolled this out, and even to today, we're very strong on communicating where we're at. I mentioned that learning mindset. So we brought our employees along. It was like a co-creation with our employees. We were very open and transparent with them about the challenges we were having, where we saw wins, where we saw areas of opportunity. And again, while we'll share some links, because we wanted to learn in the open, because we knew that other people and other companies were going through this. And that's why we've shared so many of our resources as kind of open source. And there's a lot of data that we can share online with some of the research that we've got as well.
Fantastic. Well, we'll certainly share that. I know it's going to, a lot of people interest we piqued, but a lot of people know about it already because you've been very open about it. Yeah. Okay, Alastair, thank you for that. That's absolutely brilliant. I always like to finish with that little curveball question. Can you tell us something about yourself that few people would probably know?
Yes, there's a few things, but linking to where, the first question you asked about my career, something that not many people know, but I always tell people, or not always tell people, I tell people more in small mentoring circles. I started my design career in a call center. So when I left university, I traveled around the world to South America, Central America, New Zealand, Australia, and Southeast Asia. And my first job, technically in Australia, when I was backpacking, was in a call center. But the reason that I tell people I started my design career there is because I really enjoyed my time working there. It was super fun as an early 20-year-old. But I learned the value of listening and asking questions to uncover the need. And that's a really great lesson for anybody in design, because until you really understand the true need of your customer or your business, it's very hard to define a solution. And then the second lesson from that call center was the power of effective communication, right? Being able to share your message in a really powerful way. Because again, when you're talking to somebody on a phone, and you can't see them, it's really hard, right? It's really hard. So yeah, so that's something that not many people know, but has been an important lesson in my life.
I think that's a great way to finish. You've actually managed to give us further lessons in design for a question that's usually non-design related. Brilliant. Well, Alastair, it's been brilliant to have you. We look forward to seeing your future TDA events and meetups. And thank you so much for the brilliant content. It was great to learn about all the great work you're doing at Dropbox.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I hope everyone enjoys the show. So thank you, Andrew.
Cheers.